In 1975, a 24-year-old engineer walked into a boardroom in Rochester, New York, carrying a box the size of a toaster. When he walked out, the executives had told him, "It's cute, but don't tell anyone about it." That box was the world's first digital camera. And the company that invented it, Kodak, would go bankrupt because of it 37 years later. What almost nobody tells you straight is this: Kodak wasn't blind to digital. They saw it before anyone. They built it themselves and consciously chose to bury it. Because their executives did exactly the right short-term math, and that math killed them in the long term. This is the story of how rational calculation can destroy an empire when that empire depends on the future never arriving. To understand the fall, you have to see how massive it was. Kodak was founded in 1888 by George Eastman in Rochester. Their famous line, "You press the button, we do the rest," wasn't marketing. It was the business model. Kodak didn't make money selling cameras. They sold cameras so you would keep buying film, year after year, decade after decade. The perfect model, like Gillette with razors, like printers with ink cartridges. Cheap camera, expensive film. And Kodak made the camera, the film, the chemicals, the paper, the development roles. They controlled the entire chain. At their peak, in 1996, Kodak made $16 billion a year. They were worth $31 billion on the stock market. They were the fifth most valuable brand on the planet, right behind Coca-Cola and Disney. They had 90% of the film market in the United States, 85% of the camera market, and 145,000 employees worldwide. The word Kodak was synonymous with the word photo. But 21 years earlier, in 1975, something had happened inside their own labs that was going to unravel all of this. His name was Steven Sasson, 24 years old, freshly hired engineer. His boss had given him an assignment: see if a new kind of electronic sensor, a CCD, could capture images. A year later, Sasson had built the result: a toaster-sized box, 8 pounds, with a Super 8 camera lens, 16 batteries, and a cassette tape where it stored the image. Resolution, 10,000 pixels. Capture time per photo, 23 seconds. The first photograph this camera ever took was of a Kodak lab technician named Joy Marshall. 23 seconds to record onto cassette tape. Another 23 seconds to read back on a television screen. Black and white, 100 by 100 pixels. December 1975. Sasson took the prototype to a boardroom with the executives, and the executives weren't stupid. They saw exactly what it was: a camera that didn't need film. They saw that someday, probably many years later, that box would get smaller, faster, cheaper. And they understood what that meant for Kodak. The death of the business. No film, no chemicals, no paper, no developing. No gold mine paying every salary. So they made a perfectly rational short-term decision. Sasson himself tells the story. It was cute, but they said, "Don't tell anyone." Kodak patented the technology, patent number 4,131,919, but decided not to develop it as a product. The patent stayed public, but the product dead internally. And the decision again was right, in the short term. In 1975, a camera with 10,000 pixels, 8 pounds, and 23 seconds per photo couldn't beat a Kodak Instamatic with film. There was no market. Building it as a product meant cannibalizing themselves years before the technology was ready. Any rational executive would have made the same call. The problem is that another company faced exactly the same disruption and reacted the opposite way. That company was Fujifilm. Until the year 2000, Fujifilm depended on film just as much as Kodak. 60% of revenue, 66% of profit. Same starting point. But in 2003, Fujifilm did something Kodak never did. Their new CEO, Shigetaka Komori, didn't ask, "How do we survive digital?" He asked, "What are we really?" His answer changed everything. Fujifilm wasn't a photography company. It was an applied chemistry company. And chemistry sold in many more markets than film: cosmetics, medicine, electronics, materials. In 2004, Komori launched Vision 75, a 6-year plan to diversify Fujifilm out of photography while they still had money to do it. Within a decade, Fujifilm was making skincare from collagen, LCD films from photographic substrate, and pharmaceutical compounds. Their medical imaging division alone today generates more revenue than Kodak ever did at its historical peak. Meanwhile, Kodak did the opposite, doubled down on photography. In 1996, they launched Advantix, a hybrid film format for the digital era that nobody wanted. When they finally entered digital cameras in the 2000s, they outsourced sensors and image processing to Asian manufacturers. No in-house technology, no differentiation, no moat. They sold digital cameras, yes, but they lost money on everyone. By 2011, the contrast was brutal. Fujifilm, the other film company, was making $21 billion a year, more than Kodak in its historic peak. Kodak, meanwhile, had fallen to $6 billion in revenue, with 17,000 employees. They had lost 88% of their workforce. On January 19, 2012, Kodak filed for bankruptcy. Chapter 11. Assets, $5.1 billion. Debt, $6.75 billion. The stock, which had hit $95 in 1997, closed at 15 cents, a drop of 99.8%. And the deepest cut. In 2013, Kodak sold its entire digital patent portfolio, including Sasson's invention, for $527 million, to a consortium that included Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Samsung. What could have been Kodak's future ended up paying a fraction of its debt. Steven Sasson, the engineer who built the first digital camera, received the National Medal of Technology from President Obama in 2009. By then, his prototype was on display at the Smithsonian. The company that buried it was 3 years from bankruptcy. Kodak's lesson isn't that they didn't see the future, they invented it. The lesson is that seeing the future isn't enough if your business model depends on the future never arriving. Kodak couldn't embrace the digital camera because doing so meant killing film, and film paid salaries, bonuses, dividends, pensions. The rational short-term call was the catastrophic long-term one. And Fujifilm proves the way out existed. Redefine what the company is, not defend what the company does. Apple understood this when they killed the iPod with the iPhone. Kodak never got there. The killer is almost never the new rival. It's the inability to kill the cash cow before the market does it for you. If Kodak died protecting the model that made it rich, wait until you see the case of Toys R Us, the biggest toy store in the world, killed not by Amazon, but by the debt of its own private owners. I'll leave it right here. And subscribe, one empire that falls every week.